Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Moss Landing Community Plan Update EIR scoping meeting. There's a sign-in sheet in the back if you haven't signed in already. And then we also had some snacks and water, and there's also an agenda. Oh, let me get that out of here. So I'm Phil Angelo. I'm a planner with the County of Monterey, and I'm joined by Mike Novo, who's been working on the community plan update for several years, and Katie Skiriot, who is another planner with the county, and Terry Whistler-Adam, who is our environmental consultant for the EIR associated with the community plan update. Before we get started, we do want to let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded, and we plan to post both the meeting materials and the recording onto our webpage for the project. If you've joined by Zoom, your audio and video will be automatically turned off unless you're speaking, and you can adjust the layout of the slides and the panelists on Zoom. We also have a microphone for when people are making public comments in the back. That way people online can hear. So this is very high level. The current Moss Landing Community Plan was adopted in 1982 and is Chapter 5 of the North County Land Use Plan, which is in turn part of the county's local coastal program. The community plan includes land use designations for different areas in the community and policies specific to Moss Landing that supplement those in the North County Land Use Plan, which are also applicable in Moss Landing. The community plan update process began several years ago in 2008 in response to a Board of Supervisors referral. The Moss Landing Community Plan Update Committee was formed to review the existing plan and create a vision for the community's future. The recommendations of that update committee formed the foundation for the updated plan, which has been iterated several times over the years since then. Between 2018 and 2020, there were a series of community meetings and planning commission workshops to refine the plan. And that brings us today, where the county has posted an updated draft of the plan on our website dated December 6, 2024. And we're initiating environmental review on the plan update. Want to talk about the CEQA process, Katie?
Hi, everyone. The county has determined that an environmental impact report or an EIR should be prepared for the community plan update project under the California Environmental Quality Act, also known as CEQA. The purposes of CEQA are to disclose potential significant environmental effects on proposed actions, identify ways to avoid or reduce adverse environmental effects, consider feasible alternatives to proposed actions, foster interagency coordination in review of projects, and/or enhance public participation in the planning process. Is it just?
Yeah, it's just the article.
Oh, yeah. Okay. No.
Thank you. It's on.
No, it's okay. Last Thursday, the county released a notice of preparation or NOP for the EIR. The NOP notifies responsible agencies and interested parties that an EIR will be prepared for a project, includes a brief description of the project and its location, and solicits input regarding the scope, focus, and content of the EIR for the project. The comment period for the NOP began on December 6th, 2024, and will go until January 21st, 2025. This gets into the purpose of our meeting today. Oh,
Skipped ahead.
oops. Sorry. This gets into our purpose of our meeting today. After distribution of an NOP, a lead agency may schedule a scoping meeting. The purpose of the scoping meeting is to solicit comments to determine the scope of the EIR, including significant environmental issues, reasonable alternatives, and/or mitigation measures that should be considered for inclusion in the EIR. The comments we receive in response to the NOP and for the scoping meeting will be then considered when determining the scope of the environmental analysis in the EIR. If you provide verbal comments today, we encourage you to submit the comments in writing We don't want to misunderstand or misrepresent any comments. In addition to the scoping meeting, there will be other opportunities to provide input and comments throughout the CEQA process. Once it's completed, what's called a draft EIR will be released for review, and then the project would be considered at public hearings before the Monterey County Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors and the California Coastal Commission.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Novo. Thank you for all for hanging in for so many years. I know a few of us have been in this room many times together, so it's good to see some familiar faces, but we're kind of on the final push, so I'm hoping you guys can all hang in there a little longer with us and get us over this significant project that we've worked on for many years. So the certified 1982 plan, which is our existing plan, provided a land use vision for Moss Landing and was organized as shown on the slide in those chapters or sections. The plan policies focused on circulation and wastewater infrastructure, commercial fishing and recreational boating, public access and recreation, energy facilities, industrial development, and protection of Moss Landing's unique community character. However, since 1982, we've had several changes, obviously in the last 40 years. The harbor expansion is phase 2 that we had in the plan is no longer a vision for the harbor, and neither is the relocation of Sandholder Road Bridge that was already reconstructed. The power plant and the industrial operations on the east side of Highway 1 have changed significantly, as you all know, and live on a daily basis here. There's been a significant expansion of marine research on the island in particular, but really in the area, and really a decrease in commercial fishing as well as a result, or maybe not as a result, but as one of the factors. We also understand a lot more about climate hazards than we did 40 years ago. We have some specific data now about how that will affect the community or could affect the community. And one thing we didn't have on the slide, but we also eliminated the sewer limitations. Thank you, Eric, for being here. So the county has a number of objectives. I'm not going to read these. But these will be as part of the EIR process. These are listed in the EIR as the county's objectives for the plan. And these help shape what the plan was trying to achieve, but also will help shape the project alternatives that the EIR has to consider as part of the EIR process. CEQA requires what's called a reasonable range of alternatives to the project to try and lessen or avoid impacts. And these will help shape those alternatives that we'll study. This slide is a summary of the project, or summarizes the project components that are going to be analyzed in the EIR. Updating the community plan, of course, is the heart of the project, but the project also involves including and updating certain policies in the North County land use plan to make sure it's internally consistent, because there are some referrals in the North County policies that refer back to the Moss Landing section or Moss Landing community. We also are updating the Monterey County Coastal Implementation Plan, which are the regulations that go with the plan. So the EIR will be looking at all those components. The EIR will also analyze two specific development applications. MBARI, Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, has a couple components left to do in their master plan. And so that's included in the EIR as a project. We also have a Moss Landing Road storm drain and street improvement project. I know from our many meetings here, we've been asking about getting pedestrian access between the neighborhood and the downtown area, and that's part of that component. So I know Phil's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of those projects. So the proposed draft community plan that the EIR is going to be looking at includes updated land use designations and policies. It also reorganizes the structure of the community plan. The 1982 plan elements of land use, commercial fishing and recreation, boating, energy facilities are now consolidated into a new land use and development chapter or section 5.4. We have a resource management section 5.2, which is newly created, and that incorporates topics of visual resources, environment sensitive habitat, cultural resources, water resources, and climate change hazards. The 1982 plan sections on circulation and wastewater are now addressed as part of a public services systems element, section 5.3. And so, again, we're updating all those policies in the plan. And I'm gonna turn it back over to Phil. Bring us home.
Thanks, Mike. The EIR will also analyze the reasonably anticipated build-out that would result from adoption of the new community plan. This analysis would be in comparison to existing on-the-ground conditions rather than the development that would have been allowed under the 1982 community plan. Build-out includes development of vacant properties with uses that would be allowed under the proposed land use designations in the plan. Applications and pre-applications that the county has on file, as well as specific policies within the new plan that would contemplate a certain amount of development. The major applicable policies for this are a policy in the plan that allows up to 150 visitor serving units within the plan area, and a policy that would allow the water, wastewater, and traffic generation equivalent of 2 million square feet of industrial development at the Moss Landing Business Park. So one of the specific development projects, as Mike mentioned, is the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute project. Their master plan has been kind of built out over the last many years, and the EIR would look at the remaining elements that need to be completed in it. That would include construction of a new 7,500 square foot dock house, which is the circled green building K, as well as about 100 square foot mooring dolphin building F. However, that mooring dolphin is in the California Coastal Commission jurisdiction rather than the county. The community plan, the EIR will also look at the Moss Landing Street and street improvement project along Moss Landing Road, including drains, curbs and gutters, and sidewalk that's intended to connect from Highway 1 here down to the Heights neighborhood. CEQA analyzes potential impacts to the physical environment, including both direct and indirect impacts. This touches on a very wide range of potential issues. And while I won't read all of them aloud, these are the issues that will be analyzed in the EIR. The EIR will also consider cumulative impacts of other projects in the vicinity in combination with the project. And as Mike mentioned, it'll include consideration of project alternatives. An EIR is required to provide a reasonable range of project alternatives. And the objectives on the previous slide kind of act as the hinge point for how those different alternatives are evaluated. As Katie mentioned, this meeting will not be the only opportunity for comment. As sea level rise and climate change hazards are a new topic area that are covered in the plan, we're planning to have a community meeting to discuss those in February of 2025. It's been a number of years since the plan was last brought before the Planning Commission, so we're planning to bring it for an informational update to the Monterey County Planning Commission, either in March or April of 2025. The release of the draft EIR and beginning of the public comment period on the draft EIR is anticipated for July of 2025. And then the response to comments in the final EIR will be in December of 2025. Following that, Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors hearings on the community plan would be anticipated in early 2026. In order for the plan to go into effect, it must be certified by the California Coastal Commission. So following these hearings, the county would need to submit to the California Coastal Commission, and they would need to determine that it's consistent with the Coastal Act and certify it in order for it to be implemented. And Katie's gonna help with some of the public comment information.
So we're now going to provide instructions for public comment and then move into our public comment portion of today's meeting. We ask that you focus your comments on the scope, focus, and contents of the EIR, including suggested mitigation measures or alternatives to avoid and reduce environmental effects. Submitting comments in writing is encouraged. There are comment cards in the back, and later we'll have instructions on how to mail or email in comments. So if you haven't, there's some sheets back there. They're just lined pieces of paper, and then you all can submit them to us, and then that'll be a part of the public record. And then. All right. So if you've called into the meeting today, you can press *9 to indicate you'd like to speak. Staff does not have the ability to unmute you, so listen to the message. You'll hear this message. The host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can then press *6 to unmute. Once you're done with your comment, you may press *6 to mute yourself again. And then if you're in the meeting by Zoom, you can click the raise hand icon in the bottom of the screen and you'll be added to the queue to speak. Once it's your turn to speak, similarly, staff cannot unmute you, so it's important to press unmute myself, and then you can remute when you are finished with your public comment. And we'll go from people that are dialing in to Zoom, and then to folks that are in person that want to provide public comment. Yeah, so we can get started. Do you want me to monitor that? Okay.
And then in addition to the comment cards, you can also submit your comments to sequacomments@countyofmonterey.gov. Or you can mail them to County of Monterey and the address that's up here. If you have any questions, you can contact me. My contact information is here, and it's also in the agendas that are in the back. And that QR code takes you to the webpage for the project, and it's also on the agenda.
Before you go there, we know you only got this notice probably about a week ago or so. Take your time, you read through the materials, you've got till January to comment just on the EIR scoping. And we will have many more opportunities to talk about the plan and regulations later as well. So tonight's just on the EIR process itself. If you don't want to make some early comments without reading too much, you have till January 21st, so don't feel rushed. And I'll bring this microphone around when we have public comment so that people on Zoom can hear all of us speaking.
I guess we'll go into the public comment. I see a couple of people on Zoom. Did anyone want to speak or have any comments at this time? If so, you can click on the raise hand icon and we'll ask you to unmute. Hi, Alyssa. I think if you unmute, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, yeah, Alyssa Guter from TAMC. I just had a question about the sea level rise workshop. Can you give any more information about that and what might be discussed?
This is Mike Nova. We have some draft regulations we've been working on. So it's going to be really focused on those regulations about the process of analyzing sea level rise and climate change for projects. If you don't mind, it's not really part of this meeting tonight, so if you want to give me a call, Alyssa, that would be great, and we can talk more about details about timing
Okay.
and all. Thank you.
Sounds good, thanks.
I just asked for clarification.
Angelica, committee member. I'm just wondering, when the EIR is done, the only two things they need to consider is whether the Embari can build those two buildings, and if the sidewalk has problems with the environment, or are there other issues that are being considered with EIR, like road widening or the things that TAMC is planning and stuff like that?
You want to take that one?
I can take a stab at it.
Go for it.
So I guess it wouldn't just be focused on those two specific projects. It would also consider the environmental impacts associated with the updated policies and the updated like regulations and land use designations. So it'll look at things like the vacant properties along Moss Landing Road. They're going to be Moss Landing commercial. What would build out of those properties look like? I don't, in regard specifically to widening, I don't know if that'll be analyzed. Everything would need to flow from the policies in the plan.
Yeah, it does analyze technical reports that are developed as part of the IR process, including traffic study that's being prepared. So we're definitely going to be looking at whether improvements are needed to facilitate the community plan's vision. And if so, then we'll have to analyze the impacts of those recommended improvements. If that helps.
Thanks, Mike. I have two general questions. One of them is that once we have this plan, I assume that Embari is gonna pay for, implementing what they want to do. But in terms of roads or other things in the plan, is there, like putting in the sewers, is there money set aside to do that? Or is the plan just gonna be there so when someone has the funding to make something happen? That's one question. The other one is, when and why were the sewer limitations lifted?
Now let's have Mr. Kine here from Castro Community Services District can answer that on the sewer limitation.
The sewer limitation was based on the Castro treatment plant only having 105,000 gallons a day capacity. That was replaced decades after that with a new pump station that's like millions of gallons a day. So the limitation now is the Moss Landing Regional Pump Station right across from the post office. When I looked at the plans, what I noticed that it said when we took over the Castro Community Service District, it said the plan should be reevaluated. Those are just estimates. They should be reevaluated when the system is in operation. That was never done. On the island, they concluded that there was no capacity because the pumps were running 98 hours a piece. Turns out and this was an engineering firm. Turns out both check valves are stuck wide open, so they're pumping in a circle. So when I took over, we put the check valves in, corrected them, and they pump about 12 hours a week. So there's like 56 hours, 56 out of 56. Anyways, there's like 60% capacity, plenty of capacity. So we worked with the Harbor District to relieve their concerns, and so yeah, they've got a lot more capacity already. And we're doing a grant study right now. That's a lot of it.
Yeah, and on the road issue,
Or road or any other thing?
yeah. So, yeah, like I said, the ER might identify improvements that are needed. And then it's up to the county and Caltrans and TAMC to identify funding for that. There is some funding available here and there, but until we identify a project, it then has to be put into a capital improvement program. So the funding isn't there right now for what we probably will determine we need, but we don't know what we need quite yet. If that makes sense. Okay. Any other comments on EIR scoping? What would you like to see in the environmental document?
Well, I got, and I'll write some of these things down, but, I think Embari's been a great neighbor for that. The flooding on Moss Landing Road is a disaster with every rain right there next to the cemetery, the drainage issue. So I'm glad you're working on that. One of the things I don't want forgotten is that, the county spent a whole lot of money with plans on how to bury the power lines along Pierre Court. And we were promised that the project would start a week from now. We picked where we wanted everything. And then the money disappeared. There's plenty of theories about how that happened. What I want to make sure is that all of those drawings and all of those plans end up as an appendix so that they don't disappear in between every other one of these meetings. And so I'm wondering if those plans are currently in the appendix, or if you guys are aware of them or would include them, or if you need help finding them, because I think I can.
I'd say yes to all, of them, except they are not currently in appendix. So if that, I think that's a great suggestion, as an appendix maybe to our community plan. Probably not our regulatory, but maybe on the plan itself, so, yeah, if you can put that in writing, great, and we can consider including that, so they don't get lost.
Good. Thanks.
Well, you don't have to talk tonight, like I said, you got a month to still submit comments.
Thank you. I'm glad that I have a month because I have a lot to say and I'm not gonna do it all here. But I just wanted to bring up the fact about, CEQA and I haven't heard anything from anyone regarding this topic. And CEQA, environmentally sensitive habitats are areas which plant or animal life or their habitats are rare or particularly valuable because of the special nature or role in the ecosystem. Sensitive habitats also are susceptible to disturbance and degradation by human activities and developments. Rare and endangered species habitat, coastal wetlands, lagoons, marine wildlife haul-out areas, breeding and nesting areas, etc., are all under protection under CEQA. But I'm pretty alarmed, which I did write a letter here, but I haven't submitted it yet, about the fact that I've owned my property about 8 years, and I've watched the sea lions. A lot of people say, oh, well, they're just sea lions. Well, they're not just sea lions, because when they're gone, then we'll go, oh, what happened to the sea lions? I like them. But I'm concerned about, I've watched them get pushed out of all these areas that they've had for their resting area. And when they go out into the ocean, they're out there for extremely long times. If you've ever gone on a whale watching trip and you see them out 3-4 miles out in the ocean and they're, treading water for days, they have to rest. So they come back. Well, one of the places that had disappeared over the past 8 years was, it was a dock. And it was before they built that big building that's over by Pacific Harvest. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
The Pacific Harvest restaurant. Well, it was gonna be, well, it is a Pacific, but that big vacant building, they tore out all the resting area for the sea lions. So then a few years later, the sea lions moved over to the cove over there right by Moss Landing Beach, right at the end of the road there, at the end of Sandhole Road. And there was about 100 of them there. They would rest there. Well, then people started annoying them, bothering them, you know what tourists do. And so they moved again. And so the next place they landed was right smack in front of Mabari, and their new lab was being built, the big one. And so Mabari moves in and they want to put in this new building, and all these sea lions were undulated with building supplies, construction materials, trash, porta potties, piles of wood, you name it, it's over there. And it took over most of the space where the sea lions were. There was a fence there. The fence was pretty rickety, but there was a fence there to fence the sea lions out. But then when it got opened up and undulated with all these supplies, it's a very, very, it's a sad state of affairs when you see these animals in this kind of conditions. Just like I said, I took pictures and I will submit them, but they're in piles of trash. from the Bari. So anyway, that's my comment and, I'll follow up.
So if I can kind of summarize, just make sure we got it. So protection of habitat,
Protection of habitat,
huge issue on.
right, that's one of the things
That's
on
our,
here.
that's our regulatory environment anyway, but yes.
All marine wildlife call out breeding and nesting area.
And also construction and that sound like a big
Yes,
issue that we should analyze.
and it's noisy, just on and on. So thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody else online, Katie?
No.
Anybody want to do karaoke?
And I might have got more people to come to it already.
It's fine. So I think what we can offer is we'll stay around, and if you have just personal questions you want to ask us after, you do have another month till January 21st. To get us comments, and again, this is just on the EIR scoping, what do you want to see in the EIR? Comments, like you just stated, are valuable for us to think about, construction impacts, make sure we're thinking about those things, so, I think we're ready to close the meeting unless there's anybody online that has any last comments. And then we will stand around and talk to you guys. Thank you. No problem. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, speaking of that, 1996,
Yeah.
one that's, okay, very nice.